I moved to Rochester in the early 1980s, and an engineer I worked with invited me to help clean on weekends at the old house, the Northland house. And knowing almost no one, I took that opportunity. And getting ready to do this interview today really gave me pause, because at that time there were 12 rooms with 3 or 4 bathrooms that were shared, and this group of people would come in on Saturday and clean bathrooms and clean these small kitchens and living rooms. Also, that house, the families had to carry their children up the multiple floors because there was no elevator. There were only 2 interior stairways. So a lot changed from we moved from that house to the first part of this new house. The one thing I would like to talk about just a little bit is how inspiring Phil Hennock was during this time. He did a lot of fundraisers for the Northland House. Eventually, corporate McDonald's came around, and obviously now we are a very significant Ronald McDonald house. But what I wanted to say about Phil Hennock and how he inspired me for many, many years, he was such an optimist, and he would, at one point he said a group like Northland or the Ronald McDonald House must have a plan, must have a vision of something they want to yet do. You can't just maintain, you can't keep these kind of people engaged with the house if it's just maintenance or just keeping the status quo. So he was an inspiration for the expansion of the house, and now what we see, the expansion of many of the services that these families really find helpful during this very critical time of their lives. When the Ronald McDonald House was built on the south side of 2nd Street, I'd been an architect on that, and we had some fairly severe budget constraints compared to what we had later on. But it did have an elevator. It did have very decent kitchens. It had private restrooms. It had a few rooms that were ADA accessible for families that had children, older kids in wheelchairs. It just had a whole lot of different and better services. And then when we added the second part, we essentially added a lot more rooms, and we added really a decent community kitchen downstairs. The second addition, the one on the east side, added highest quality rooms, really well thought out rooms, and a much more quiet construction. It's concrete slabs between the floors, so there's really no noise between the rooms. Same sort of arrangement for a family in a room as the other part of the house, but substantially better kitchen facilities and even better outside access. There's a private courtyard now for the families, so that they aren't really on display to the community, but can have their privacy and be together. Emeritus is like being old, but it was really a privilege, and it was an honor. And it indicated also that the work wasn't done. But there's still things you can do for the house. I'd been on the version of a building committee for all of the additions to the house, so it's a way to stay in touch, to keep working on the house. Going back to the 1980s when I first got involved, the kind of people that showed up to clean the house, to clean the toilets, they were physicians' families, they were local families who'd had sick children. Really what they were these really great people who became good friends. And that's one of the things I've encouraged people over the years. That's a reason to get involved with the Ronald McDonald House, is you will get to engage with these really decent people who understand how important some of these things are to these families sort of in crisis at this time.